G'day guys, we finally have the index for World Eaters in our hands, so let's have a look at what these blood-soaked maniacs can do in 10th edition Warhammer 40k.
Look for the Blood God.
Alrighty guys, let's talk about the Exalted Eightbound. These guys received more changes than most units in the index update, so let's have a look at what they do. Basically, they've now gone to toughness 6 like their Eightbound brothers. They lost their 4-up invulnerable save. It's now been replaced with a 6-up feel no pain, and that can be buffed to a 5-up feel no pain with the Blessings of Khorne rolls, which 5-up feel no pain and a 5-up invulnerable save is roughly the same as a 4-up invulnerable save anyway, so more or less a lateral change there. One of the big areas where they've changed is their damage output. So they no longer have access to a stratagem to get +1 to damage on them, which means that they're not going to be going in and doing 3 damage and just cleaving through things like Terminators. And it also means that they are now particularly vulnerable to anything, which there's a lot of, that has -1 damage. So being able to take something that only has 2 damage and make it -1 means you're cutting its damage in half. And because they don't have access to get that +1 damage, they're not able to bring it back up and effectively double their damage. So that's a real concern. Further to that, they lost a number of attacks. So now they're going in with fewer attacks with those chain fists. However, those chain fists are hitting very hard. They're strength 14, 15 on the charge because you're getting a +1 attack and +1 strength from being a World Eater. So they're going in and they're hitting very hard. And they are also AP3, which is going to be particularly relevant in this edition, where there's a lot of 2-up armor saves running around, and a lot of things have reduced in armor penetration, which means that those things that didn't, or those things that do still have that high armor penetration, are going to be particularly valuable because people are going to shift heavily into those 2-up saves, knowing that most people lost their armor penetration. So the fact that these guys kept it and still have the ability to punch through that armor is really exciting. However, I think the most exciting thing with these guys that changed was one of their datasheet abilities. So now they basically still have that aura of can't fall back against them. Every enemy unit within 6 inches in the start of your opponent's command phase or movement phase has to roll a leadership check, and should they fail, they must remain stationary. So it's not like the Warp Talons from the Chaos Space Marines where they have, the reduced capacity to fall back, or they take, the desperate breakout checks when they fall back. This is just, nope, you can't fall back, you must remain stationary, which really does open up an exciting combo. I spoke about this when we talked about the Lord Invocatus, where basically you're going to be able to add the Lord Invocatus to this unit, which allows it to scout move. One of the biggest weaknesses of the Eightbound previously was that they didn't have core, which meant they didn't have access to the Fights on Death stratagem, they didn't have access to Heroic Intervention, and they didn't have access to Lord Invocatus's pre-game move. So that's all changed now because core is no longer a thing, which means you're able to add the Lord Invocatus to this unit, and you're going to be able to pre-game move it. You're going to be able to fight on death with the Blessings of Khorne. You're going to be able to heroically intervene with the stratagems. So you're going to be able to do all of the things that you previously wanted to be able to do. And it's also worth noting that you can now do this with a unit of 6 Exalted Eightbound. It's no longer limited to 3. So you take a unit of 6 Exalted Eightbound, you smack a Lord Invocatus in there. That whole little nugget can pre-game move up into the middle of the table. Then you're going to be able to move. You're going to be able to spend a stratagem to auto-advance 6. You're going to be able to use the Blessings of Khorne to get a 6-inch advance on these guys. So you're going to be going really fast up the table with your +2 to move from Blessings of Khorne as well. They're going to be going in hard. And then when they hit their opponent, they're going to stop your opponent from being able to fall back. Now, the interesting thing there is you can charge, kill something, pile into a couple of other things, and then if any of those things fail their leadership check, they're not going to be able to fall back, which means they're going to stay in engagement range of you, which means enemy units are not going to be able to shoot your Eightbound or your Lord Invocatus because they're locked in combat. Then in your opponent's turn, you're either going to kill the unit that you're touching, or you're going to not kill it, stay engaged in combat, and then because the Lord Invocatus provides fallback, advance, and fallback and charge, you're going to be able to fall back out of that combat and then either go charge something else or charge straight back into that combat and therefore fight first in the upcoming fight. So you're going to be able to do some really janky stuff with the Lord Invocatus Exalted 8-bound combo. I actually think that these guys got significantly better based on the fact that they're now bigger units and they now have access to all of those various stratagems. Even though they did take a significant hit in damage output, they did gain a lot out of the change. It's also worth noting they do gain access to -1 damage from the stratagems. They did gain 6-up Feel No Pain inbuilt without having to do anything. That can be buffed to a 5-up Feel No Pain. This is really interesting against things like Mortal Wounds. 5-up Feel No Pain against Mortal Wounds is going to make these guys 1/3 tougher. So that's really exciting. And I actually think, all things considered, Exalted 8-bound got better in this edition. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see what people can do with them. Let me know what you think in the comment section below about Exalted 8-bound. Do you think they got better? Do you think they got worse? What are your thoughts? All right, next up we have the Worldies Land Raider. Now this is one of my favorite units. I have 3 beautiful Land Raiders that I've painstakingly painted and I love them to death, and it's been really hard to get them on the tabletops because they're not particularly competitively viable previously. However, I think they got a serious glow up in this edition. First of all, they're significant.
Look for the Blood God.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.